Should we start, students? Ready? Starting with Payment of Wages Act 1936. Which chapter I am starting with is, students? Payment of Wages Act 1936, which is 18th chapter, part 1 of 18th chapter. Okay? Okay, students? So, when it comes to Payment of Wages Act 1936, can I say that this is nothing more than a parliamentary law? Can I say that this is the law that has been made by parliament, but the parliament was not functioning in 1936. So definitely it would be a pre-constitutional law, right, that has been made by the British government and been adopted by the Parliament of India, right? Right, students? That we can, by checking the years, we can say that, right? That it has been prepared by, it has been passed by whom? The British government, and later on it must be adopted by Parliament, that we are not going to pass a new law for Payment of Wages Act. Whatever law that has been passed by the Parliament is going to be continued by whom? Is going to be continued by whom? The Indian government, right? Right, students? So it is a pre-constitutional law. Which kind of law it is? Pre-constitutional law. Now we'll try to guess the law related with payment of wages would consist which kind of matters. I think it would carry a matter that pertaining to payment of wages, like when to pay the wages, right? Right, students? After studying this particular topic, I would be well versed with the concept that every organization has to pay the wages, right? If they are hiring the services of an employee, they or labor, they have to pay the wages. But the question is, when to pay the wages is going to be solved by whom? Payment of Wages Act, right? Right, students? This law is going to solve the biggest query of all the organization, that if I am working as a company secretary or under an HR department of a company, what would be the due date of payment of wages would be resolved by this enactment, right? Right? Whether I should pay the wages on 1st of every month, or I have to pay the wages on 7th of every month, or I have to pay the wages on 10th of every month, what would be the due date of payment of wages would be provided by this law. Can I say that? Is it clear? If this law would not be there, it would be up to the discretion of the organization when to pay the wages, right? Right, students? Got my point? So the due date of wages is going to be determined by this law, right? Now, I think this law is also going to determine the wage period. This law is also going to determine the wage period. Wage period means what? Within how many days, right? For how many days I have to work in order to get my first payment, right? Right? Wage period is what? If this law would not be there, the organization may opt for, I will pay you wage on daily basis. They may opt it for, I am going to pay the wage fortnightly on 15 days, right? They may opt it like, I am going to pay you annual wages, right? Right, students? If this law would not be there, then in that case, the employer and employee will determine that when to pay the wage, right? Yes. Right? After what wage period the wage payment should be made, right? The wage period would not be uniform and similar, right? Yes. Right, students? But because this law is here, can I say that over here in India, everybody is getting monthly salary because of this law, right? Can I say that? How many queries they have resolved? The first, when to pay the wages, means what should be the due date of wage, right? The second one would be what? What should be the wage period, right? Right, students? The third thing they would determine, that how much wage to be paid. How much wage to be paid. Think logically, students. Don't act like you are not getting anything, or you are taking it like I am reading any bhajan or something and you are getting the thing. Okay, can any law determine the amount or value of wage to be paid? Do you think that? Can any law be able to determine that if Rahul has been employed by Arivu Pro, how much amount should be paid to Rahul? Can it be determined by any law, or it is going to be determined by a contract? It should be determined by the contract, right? Every organization, while hiring the services of an employee, would get into an employment contract, right? Right, students? And in employment contract, the terms of payment has been written, right? Right, that on what salary I am appointing you, right? So the amount cannot be determined by the law, right? But the law may determine that what kind of penalties, fines, or kind of deductions can be made out of those wages, right? Out of those payments, right? Right, students? How many things will be resolved? If I am comfortable with Payment of Wages Act, I would suggest my organization, see, you have a due date of payment of wages on that day, right? Right? Second, I can tell them that about the wage period, that how much wage period you guys can carry on with, right? I can help them out to determine the policy related with fines, deductions, and penalties, right? Right, students? If I'm comfortable with Payment of Wages Act, I would guide them, see, don't charge this much penalty. If you'll charge this much penalty, it would be contravention of Payment of Wages Act. You would be subject matter of punishment and penalty, right? So the amount of fine, penalties, and deductions will be provided under this enactment, right? Right? How many queries has been resolved? 3 queries. You tell me the 3 queries. Due date of wage. The penalties and deductions, right, that can be made out of wages, right? And the fourth thing that can be determined would be who is responsible for the payment of wages. Tell me who would be responsible for payment of wages. Logically, you guys would answer, sir, employer, right? Right, students? But do you think that over here in India, every employee is being appointed by employer? Who is appointing the employee? Beta, HR department comes under employer only, no, right? There are 2 categories of laborers that can be appointed over here in India. Either you can be on roll of the employer, you can work under the employer, or you can be hired up by the contractor. You can be hired up by the contractor. Have you watched Shark Tank? Have you watched that episode in which one contracting agency has came who is providing you maid on mobile application, Broomies? Have you heard about Broomies? See, if I am searching for an house help, okay, and I am not getting it through my local contact, I can hire that house help or maid through Broomies, right? And I have to make the payment to Broomies, and Broomies is going to pay to the. Now, who is the employer over here? I am the employer, right? Right? But do I am paying the amount to the worker who is working in my home? Answer would be no. Who is paying the amount would be Broomies. That is called contractor, right? Right, students? Yes.
Agency and contractors are
They are same, beta. They are same. Whenever I am talking about agency or contract, law of contract includes law of agency, right? Whenever I am talking about contractor, I am talking about a person who is supporting me to get the required people, right? I am not willing to hire, employees directly. I am not willing to get into any kind of, contractual relationship with those people. See, when it comes to movie making process, right? Can I say that if Dharma Production is coming out with a new movie, they'll hire the services of the lead actors, right, or supporting cast, right? But whenever there is a need to arrange the crowd is going to be arranged by the contractor, right? Right, students? Am I right or wrong? So there are 2 kinds of categories or 2 categories of employment over here in India. Either it can be a contractual employment or it can be a direct employment. If you are in a direct employment, right, who is responsible to pay the wages is the employer, right? But if you are through the contractor, who is primarily responsible to make the payment is the contractor. Got my point, students? Is it clear? Is it clear? So if I am well equipped with Payment of Wages Act, I would be able enough to understand when to pay, what would be the due date of payment of wages, right? What should be the wage period, right? What kind of penalty deductions I can, deduct from the salary of an employee, right? What is the maximum permissible limit? And fourth thing, who is responsible to payment for the payment of the wages, right? If he is the employer, he would be officer in default, right? if he would be the employer, he would be officer in default, right? Who is officer in default? The person who is subject matter of punishment, right? Right, students? In case of contravention, who is answerable, right? That is called officer in default, right? Who is officer in default? Who is responsible for the compliance, right? If he will not comply, he has to answer, right? If he is not giving the proper answer, he would be punished, right? Right, students? How many questions will be solved? Fourth. The fifth question is, do you think that any law would have of any substance it would be if it would not carry any penal provisions? Do you think that if your parents are saying something to you or ordering something to you and there is some punishment, penalty or reward is associated with that, right? Can I say that assurance of having that action would be there, right? Because you know that, you know the consequences, right? Consequences are essential in order to make sure that that law is being duly complied with. What kind of consequences should be there? A penal consequences should be there, right? If you are not going to pay the wage on time, what would happen? We'll charge the interest. You will say, like, why to pay interest? Yeah, right? Pay on time, right? If you are not going to pay wage on the due date, you are subject matter of punishment. You would be like, no, the consequences are not favorable. I'll pay on time, right? Right, students? So this act will provide for the consequences on non-compliance of this enactment. If you're not paying on time, if you're not paying properly, right? You're not paying on proper wage period, right? And you are taking the law for granted. You are putting unnecessary penalties. You are taking unnecessary deductions. Got my point, students? So how many questions will be solved for an HR or for a company secretary? If you are comfortable with what, beta? Payment of Wages Act, you would be comfortable with the due date of wage, right? You will be comfortable with the wage period. You will be comfortable with the deductions and fines, right? You will be comfortable with who is responsible, and you would be comfortable with do it, otherwise face the consequences, right? Right, students? Is it clear? So 5 questions we guys are going to solve. Is it clear? Now you guys can do it now, right? Can you write a short note on what is the objective or motive behind Payment of Wages Act? Will you guys be able enough to write the answer? Yes, students. Now the next thing is, now every law is coming up with definitions. Now why the law is defining something? They are defining in order to make a uniform approach, that if we are using this term, understand this in this way. Can I say that definitions are nothing more than dictionary of that law? Can I say that? Can I say that? Yes. What is definition? Definition is nothing more than the restricted dictionary of that particular terms that has been defined in the law, right? So they are defining the term employer, employed person. What is employed person? The employee, right? Employee is what, beta? Employed person. And after that they are saying that in case of death of the employed person, he is legal representative. What they are saying, beta? Legal representative. Understood? What you have understood? Yes, please. Tell me, what you have understood? Sir, employee means employee, and employee means the legal hire of the legal hire or legal representative, right? Right, students? Legal representative of whom? Employee, right, students? So what kind of sense this definition makes? What kind of sense this definition would make? What would be the sense of this definition? Tell me the sense of this definition. Okay, so what would be, if I am a layman, I am nothing to do with law, and you are a company secretary?
Confirm with online student.
So what the definition means? What do you mean by this definition? What would be the outcome of this definition? So as a consultant, what I would say after reading this definition, no, students, see, if someone's father died during the employment, his legal hire would have a right to take action against under Payment of Wages Act. Can I say that? This definition sounds like that only, na? If someone's father died, right, during an employment, What are you doing, student? Why you are moving the pen? Listen, got my point, student? So what would be the consequence of this definition? What would be the concept of this definition? If someone's father got died during an employment, here afterward you guys are going to got to know that within 2 working days on the death or disablement or something, the remuneration or the salary or wages has to be paid, right? If it would not be paid,
Excuse me.
yes,
Can you leave for like 10 minutes?
just a minute, I am finishing one small definition. Yes, I'll cover it up later. So got my point, students? So you got no. So if the employee got died, will the legal hire would have any kind of right to take action against the employer? Answer would be yes, because employed person includes legal hire, right? Right, students? In the same way, the employer includes legal hire or legal representative of deceased employee. So if the father employed few people and he died, the obligation to discharge the salary of all those people employed by the father lies on the son. Got my point, students? Is it clear? So employee includes what? Legal representative. Employer includes what? In both the cases, they just wanted to extend you a right that if something wrong happens with your father and he is no more, then go ahead and file action under Payment of Wages Act, because you would come under the definition of employee, right? Right, student? And if something that has been done or committed by your father, you have to discharge the obligation of your father, because you would come under the definition of employer, right? You will come under the definition of employer. So if something is being committed by Dhirubhai Ambani, it has to be performed by Mukesh Ambani because of Payment of Wages Act. Got my point, students? Giving you a break of 10 minutes, then we'll continue. Okay.